There was a conversation I replayed in my head almost every night for 6 weeks. I was sitting across from someone I cared about, someone who had been patient with me for longer than I deserved, and they said something very quietly, the way people say things when they have been holding them for a long time. They said, "You are so focused on becoming better that you have forgotten how to be good." I didn't respond. I sat there and nodded and said I understood, but I drove home that evening with my hands tied on the wheel, and I knew, with a clarity that was almost physical, that they were right. I had been on a self-improvement streak for almost a year at that point. Waking up early, reading every morning, cutting out habits that weren't serving me, working toward goals I had written down and reviewed every week. I was doing all the things the books and the videos said to do, and I had genuinely convinced myself that doing all of those things was making me a good person. That discipline and ambition and self-mastery were the same thing as character. They are not, I know that now. But for the better part of that year, I confused them completely. What I was actually doing, underneath all of the productivity and the self-optimization, was withdrawal. I was so focused on building myself that I had stopped giving anything to anyone else. I would miss calls and not call back for days because I was in a focused block. I would sit at dinner and be present in body and absent in everything that mattered. I would hear about something difficult happening in someone's life and file it away as information rather than responding to it as a human being. I told myself I was protecting my energy, that I couldn't pour from an empty cup, that I had to prioritize myself. Every piece of language I had absorbed from the self-help world gave me a sophisticated way to justify what was, in practice, a slow and steady retreat from the people around me. The worst part is I didn't see it happening. That's the thing about this particular kind of failure, it wears the costume of virtue. I wasn't being lazy, I wasn't being reckless, I was being disciplined, I was working on myself. From my own internal perspective, it all looked like progress. It took someone who knew me well enough and cared about me enough to say the thing I didn't want to hear for me to see what I had actually become. No better, just more efficient at being closed. I started thinking about the specific moment, the friend who had mentioned offhandedly that they were going through something hard, and I had responded with 2 sentences and redirected the conversation towards something I wanted to talk about. The family member I had told myself I would call back after this week settled down, and the week never settled down, and the weeks kept moving, and I kept not calling. A colleague who made a small mistake in front of others, and I corrected them in a way that was technically accurate and completely unnecessary. Small things, all of them. None of them dramatic, none of them the kind of thing that makes a person a villain in a story. But stacked together, across months, they formed a portrait I didn't want to look at. I started keeping a different kind of log. Not a productivity log, not a habit tracker. Just a note, at the end of each day, of one moment where I had chosen to be kind, not warm, not friendly, not socially competent, but genuinely kind. At some cost to myself, without expecting anything from it. The first week I struggled to fill it. That was the most honest thing I'd learned about myself in years. But something happened after about 3 weeks of this. The log started filling more easily, not because I was performing kindness for the sake of the journal, but because the act of noticing had changed what I was looking for in any given moment. I started moving through the day with a question running underneath everything. What does this person actually need from me right now? Not what do I need, not what is efficient, not what fits my schedule. What does this person need? And the answer more often than not was something very small, 30 seconds of genuine attention. A question I already knew the answer to but asked anyway because it gave them the chance to feel heard. A message sent at 9 o'clock on a Tuesday for no reason other than I thought of them and thought they should know. One day, a realization dawned on me. Kindness is not a feeling. It is a decision you make before you feel like making it. If you're out there and you have been telling yourself that you will be more present, more generous, more attentive to the people in your life, once you have more time, once things settle down, once you have sorted yourself out, I want you to hear this plainly. That day is not coming. There is no version of self-improvement that automatically produces kindness as a byproduct. Discipline does not generate warmth. Ambition does not generate patience. You have to build those things separately and deliberately, the same way you build any other habit by choosing them when it would be easier not to. Start where it costs you almost nothing, a genuine compliment delivered with full eye contact and no agendized. A reply to a message you have been putting off because it isn't urgent. Staying in a conversation 3 minutes longer than you want to because the other person isn't done yet. These are not grand gestures, they are not transformations, they are the actual texture of what it means to be good to someone, small, repeated, chosen. The philosopher Simone Weil wrote that attention is the rarest and purest form of generosity. She meant that the most valuable thing you can give another person is the act of fully perceiving them, not solving their problem, not fixing them, not performing empathy at them, but actually seeing them. That is available to you in every single conversation you have today. It costs nothing but the willingness to stop being the center of your own story for a few minutes at a time. You can be disciplined and kind, you can be ambitious and present, you can work on yourself without disappearing from the people who need you, but it will not happen by accident. You have to choose it every day in the small moments before you feel like it, because it turns out the people worth becoming are the ones who are good to others along the way. Thank you so much for watching. Have a great rest of your day.